So in saying all this, lots of times we throw technology at problems and think that's going to solve them, and many times it doesn't. But in this case, I think this particular technology can help a professor actually flip what's going on in the classroom and allow for more time for other types of engaging activity that would include reflection or demonstration of other techniques, other items that maybe you have to discuss with the students. And so by flipping, we are really talking about looking for ways where you might be able to use lecture capture technology to pull something out of the class and possibly make it available online. In some cases, it will be in like what Ben described in terms of a snow day, making up for a snow day, or in this next term we have 2 Mondays that are missed with holidays. This technology would work well for those. But also cases where maybe you have some type of activity, a lecture that you give frequently. The information is pretty consistent term to term, but you get lots of questions about it. And you can quickly see that just by having that available where students could listen to it, watch you again and again as many times as they felt was necessary, that you could actually then replace that in the classroom with something like a discussion about the topic, and maybe not feel so pressed for time. So a couple of examples of this. First would be one with Professor Ellis in an ed leadership course. He was finding that he was having new doc students come in. Some were coming in from education backgrounds, some were coming from other fields. And even though he had a list of readings that he asked students to do before they started the course, he was finding that he was spending a lot of time going back and covering theorists that people who were coming from outside of education didn't know about, and those that were in education sometimes seemed bored by the topic, like, why are we having to cover this again? And so he was able to take lectures that he had actually recorded for a master's level course where he covered all these theorists. He was able to provide those to students, and he does it through iTunes U, and he also did it through CD-ROMs in the beginning, and just available in Blackboard. But he makes those available to students in a way where they can pick which ones they want to listen to or watch. And so it isn't something that's a required activity, but he's able to in the class. If he's talking about Dewey, they don't seem to know about it, he can just refer them to one of the lectures that he's given on that topic and move on. And so he's felt like as a result of this, he's getting better in-class discussion, participation from these people that are coming from outside the field when they're participating. The second example is also from an ed leadership course. And in this case, the professor needed more time to present. He was given a certain number of topics that he was supposed to cover in his course, and he felt like he just didn't have enough time. He was meeting with these students, I believe, once a week, and the amount of time that they were given, he felt like he had 2 more topics that he needed to cover, and it just, every time he was trying to address it, it just felt rushed, and he felt like he was cutting into the discussion time. And so what he looked at doing was taking these 2 topics, making lectures for them, putting them outside of the course, and but he also, besides providing the lectures, he also provided discussion boards where students could initially discuss what they were online. They could discuss the topic of the lecture. And then when they did meet in person, he said he was able to have shorter, much shorter, like 20 minutes of follow-up discussion on each of those topics. And so he didn't ever tell me exactly the time savings, but he was able in that 20 minutes, he felt, to adequately cover the topics that he needed to deal with, questions that he had on those lectures. So in terms of you possibly flipping the lectures, here's some possible tips, and we're again talking about using this technology called Relay, Camtasia Relay. And so it would allow you in class or outside of class to turn lectures into chunks of differentiated instruction. So the way Ben is using it is a perfect example. He's clearly going into the class and making determinations of where he's going to break lectures up. And thereby, when students are, and he's working primarily, all face-to-face students, he's not actually doing something other than for snow days where he's taking lecture and making it only available outside of class. He's just capturing what he's doing in the classroom. And when he's doing that, he's putting himself in a situation where he's providing these students with chunks of content that they can individually go back and watch or listen to based on what their needs are. So not everyone struggles with the same topic, and by breaking it down, he's not having someone have to search through a 2-hour file to try to find 15 minutes where the scaffolding for them broke down and they were no longer learning. They needed some additional support. And so he's been pretty satisfied with that. When we first started having professors podcast, we had several professors that did, if they had a 3-hour night class, they posted the audio for that entire 3 hours. And when we talked to students, they were letting us know that they weren't really, they weren't listening to it because they couldn't find. It was taking them more time to find the part where they wanted to start listening than it was for them to just ask a friend, can I see your notes? Because I have this hole in my notes that I need to fix, and I would like somebody to help me figure out what I'm missing here. And so once we learn some better strategies, the whole pedagogy of using this type of technology in the classroom has evolved. Once we understood that better and made recommendations and people began to experiment that way, we're finding that students use this heavily, and both Ben, Derek, and others that are using it on campus will tell you about the positive feedback they get from their students by providing this. It isn't a true instructional design model. The question is, do they have drop-off in attendance? And different professors have different levels of interest or concern about that. So when we get to that, let's talk about that in more detail, because that is one of the first questions, and there's definitely research both ways. It isn't a true instructional design model. So in an instructional design model, there'd be somebody helping you determine. An instructional designer would help you determine where the best places would be to break the content up. In our institution, that's not a scalable model. So obviously you know your content, and there's natural breaks where you feel like you could break it up. But some people are still posting hour-long lectures. They're choosing to just do that, and it's still working. Students are listening to those. While you're providing this content outside of class, might be your ultimate goal to flip your course to where you can have some content outside, some inside, giving yourself maybe more time to do other activities. Many of you won't choose that as your ultimate goal. But if you do decide that's something to do, the simplest way to start is to just begin recording what you're doing now. And there might be another reason why you want to record it. You might be noticing already people are bringing recording devices to your classroom. I don't know if anybody's seeing that. And if that's happening to you, you may or may not, and how you feel about that is obviously up to you. But what people who are recording for the students are finding out is that students don't do that. And then you're in control of the recording. So how you want it to be, how you want them to access it, if you only want them to see it in Blackboard or you want to make it publicly available to others, that's your choice. If it's done outside of the class, you may find yourself or if it's done by the students, they may be sharing it however they share it. You just don't know about that. So, and that's something that's difficult to control. But again, if you're providing the recording for them, what we tend to see is that the students don't waste their time trying to record it themselves. So, we'd like to see this lead to greater accessibility for the students of the content, and then possibly by providing this, and especially if it's done in a way where they have access to it outside of class, more discussion of the content that you're providing. So here are some of the possible challenges that you might face. First, for you, the buy-in. What you're doing is you're already getting good course evaluations. What you're seeing on test scores or assessments you're giving is acceptable. Why do more work? Okay, why change what you're doing if what you're doing is already working? So that's an issue that you might run into. You might have a challenge in terms of how are you going to record this? And so I've already mentioned this idea of recording it in class first. Some people, if they start by just saying, okay, you know what, I think I will. I've got, looking at what I'm going to teach this quarter, I can easily see 5 hours of content that I could provide my students outside of class and thereby use that class time for some cooperative learning or some other types of activities where I'm having my students work together rather than listen to a lecture. And then you sit down at a microphone and it just doesn't come out because you're someone who, when you're in the classroom, just immediately you're on and you feel at home, you're comfortable, and you can just lecture there, and it comes out the way you want it to come out. When you sit in front of a microphone in an empty room, you struggle with that. So it may be the easiest thing is to just record some things in class and make this a longer-term project. Make it something that maybe someday I'll get to where I provide some content outside of class. But initially, I'm just going to work on just recording some of the content that I have in class and making it available to students. The storage location, this is a question that we would have for you. When we set this technology up, you'll let us know where you want it to go. So some people want it available so they can just send it to students by email. They just have a certain, one-time use. We've had a number of times where a professor has just come to us and said, one time I'm going to be gone for my class this term. I'd like to record one lecture. I'm not a Blackboard user. I just want to send out an email. Okay, we can help you set that up quickly. Or they say, I want to make it so I can put it in Blackboard every time. Or they say, I want to publicly make this available. Okay, and if they choose to do that, we're big fans of open learning. If you've all looked at iTunes U, it's grown substantially. We were one of 16 original schools using it. There's hundreds now using it. There's thousands of lectures that are available for students. You can use other professors' lectures. They can use yours. Your students can go out and find things. So, as Ben was talking about, a student on an airplane using it, we hear all sorts of stories like that where people are sharing content.